morning. Good morning to all of you wonderful people. Welcome back to our think tank. This is the space where we come to work on and to work out our minds, right? So we are doing mental push-ups. We're doing mental bicep curls to change the shape of our brains. This is called neuroplasticity. And as we engage in all of these practices, we are bringing the prefrontal cortex more online, and this increases our thinking capacity. Now, this is the fourth day of the Think Space Challenge. I've had a week that has been quite exhausting, quite tiring. It is freezing in Joburg. And so I thought that we could start the session by kicking off with just some mindful stretches to warm out my body and maybe to warm up yours, and also to soothe, to relax our bodies. So let's do it together. All right, and so I ask you to assume the mindful position, gently placing your feet side by side and relaxing your arms to either side of your body as you gently, just for a moment, close your eyes. Scanning your body from head to toe, scanning your body from toe to head, and just feeling how you are feeling in your body. Observing your body without judgment, and just observing yourself. And now blinking your eyes open and using your right hand to grab the top of your head, dropping your right ear down towards your right shoulder, reaching your left fingertips towards the floor, gently closing your eyes. Feeling a beautiful stretchy sensation down the left side of your neck. Softening into your breathing. Dropping your right shoulder down. And now releasing your head and bringing your chin towards your chest, your left ear to your left shoulder. Rolling your head all the way around, all the way back. Making big circular motions using your head and using your neck. Keeping these movements slow, making these movements deliberate. And the next time you bring your chin towards your chest, gently bringing your head back to center. All right, now this time we use your left hand to grab the top of your head, dropping your left ear down towards your left shoulder, reaching your right fingertips down towards the floor. Relaxing your left shoulder. Gently closing your eyes. Feeling a beautiful stretch down the right side of your neck. Softening into your jaw. Now releasing your head and bringing your chin towards your chest. Your right ear to your right shoulder, rolling your head all the way around and all the way back. Big circular motions using your head, using your neck. The next time you bring your chin towards your chest, gently returning back to center. All right, one final stretch. Interlock your fingers, place your hands behind your head, bring your elbows in close towards each other as you gently tuck your chin towards your chest. And this time you're feeling a beautiful stretchy sensation down the back side of your neck. Completely relaxing your jaw and see if you can relax your neck more and bring your chin even closer towards your chest. And very slowly lifting your chin all the way back up. Relaxing your hands in your lap, one palm on top of the other. Let's take 3 deep breaths to seal off our practice. A deep inhale through your nose. Pause and hold as you get to the top of your breath. Exhaling through your mouth and sighing out. Another deep breath in. Pause and hold. Gently exhale. One last deep breath in. And this time holding the breath for as long as you can. And as you exhale, gently opening your eyes. All right, and so our theme for today is the inner net, and we've all heard of the internet, and GFC Global describes the internet as a global network of billions of computers and other electronic devices. And with the internet, it's possible for us to access almost any information, right? So communicate with anyone else in the world and to do much, much more. So you can do all of this by connecting a computer to the internet, which is also called going online. And when someone says that a computer is online, it's just another way of us saying that it's connected to the internet, right? So the internet is a play on words on the internet, which is a place that many of us go to gain clarity on things that we need to know. So just like we have the internet, we also have our internet, which is the place where we can go within ourselves, within our minds, our bodies, and everything, and ask ourselves important questions. After all, who knows us better than ourselves? The ideal answer to that question should be, we know ourselves better than ourselves, no one else, but many of us. The reality is that we seek answers to life's questions by looking outside of ourselves and trying to glean advice from people around us. But as each of us is unique with our own personal histories, our own stories, our own sense of right and wrong, and our own way of experiencing the world that defines our realities, looking to others for answers is only partially helpful. The answers to our personal questions can be most often found by looking within ourselves. So when you realize that you always have access to the part of you that always knows what you need and is meant to act as your internal compass, you can stop searching outside yourself and then come within yourself. So come within your inner net. So if you can learn to hear, to trust, and to embrace the wisdom that lives within, you will be able to confidently navigate your answers and confidently navigate your life, right? So it's all about seeking the answers within, seeking the answers within ourselves. When we second guess ourselves and go against what we know to be our truth, we can easily go off course, because we're no longer following our inner compass. So by looking inside ourselves for answers is life's way of saying that we should be consulting the best guide, and the best guide should be ourselves. So only you know the answers to the hows and the whys of your life. The answers that you seek can be found when you start answering your own questions. When you realize that we always have the answers within ourselves, we can limit how much advice we seek from the outside world on things that only we can know. So really, trusting ourselves is one of the most helpful things that we can do for ourselves in our lives. It can help build our confidence. It can allow others to trust us more and make the process of decision making much quicker, and of course much easier. So to trust ourselves, all we need to do is make a little effort and create some self-love and find the ability to look inwards, so to look within ourselves. Self-trust is directly linked to our self-esteem. So what does that self-trust look like? So people who trust themselves, they stay true to their values and they stay true to their beliefs regardless of the situations that they're going through in their lives. They know that they are capable of overcoming obstacles and surviving the difficulties and challenges of life. When life throws lemons at them, they refuse to give up. They don't lose hope. So just like the saying goes, they make lemons out of lemonade. And it all boils down to a special thing that we all have called our intuition, called our gut instincts. And gut instincts or intuition is our immediate understanding of something. There's no need to think over and over again about something or to get much of another opinion, because we trust the inherent qualities that we have within ourselves to make decision. So your intuition arises as a feeling within your body that only you can experience. Now let's watch a short video that highlights this process. Here it is.
Now, in the psychology world, we call gut reactions somatic markers. That's the technical term for it. And this is any time where your emotions really guide or bias your decision making. And this is happening all the time. I think a lot of people try to make reasonable decisions by pushing emotions aside. Instead of using emotions, they rely on logic and they try to think through things rationally. But the argument that I'm going to make in this series is that there's no such thing as pure rational thought. Emotions are always there to help guide us through our everyday decision-making process. Here's an example. If I asked you how your day was, what would you say? Now, for most of you, you have an immediate response to this. My day was good. It's been okay. Actually, today was not that great of a day. But what you did not do was go through every single moment of your day, the entire day, weighing each and every moment precisely and taking an average of how much you liked or disliked the things that happened since you got out of bed. We just don't do that. If you had to go through that process every time somebody asked you how your day was, it would take you 3 days to respond to that question. We simply can't use pure logic to respond. We have to use a gut decision, a gut reaction to that question. Because if we relied only on logic, it would take forever. So the hypothesis here with somatic markers is that pure logic takes too long. And so emotions help make shortcuts to decision making. And these emotional or mental shortcuts are called somatic markers, and more commonly in day-to-day use, we call them gut feelings or intuitions. Now, I think this is a really amazing finding in emotion psychology because there have been scientists who studied the human brain. Where are somatic markers stored? And it turns out a lot of people believe that somatic markers are stored in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which is this really interesting region at the bottom front base of the brain near the orbital frontal cortex, where we've talked about before, contains a lot of information about how we perceive emotion. Now, I want to tell you about one research project that really blew my mind, and it was how does decision-making change when the ventromedial prefrontal cortex is either healthy or damaged? And remember, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex is where we think our somatic markers or gut instincts are stored. So what these scientists did was they put together an experiment where participants sat down in front of 4 piles of cards card pile A, card pile B, card pile C, card pile D. And all they were told to do was draw the cards from these 4 piles. Now, sometimes when they drew a card, they would win some money. Sounds great. But sometimes when they would draw a card, they would lose some money. Not so good. What the participants didn't know, however, was that some of the decks were rigged so that they would win more money over time. Other decks were rigged so that they would lose more money over time. So for example, maybe decks A and B were the good decks, decks C and D were the bad decks, but really it was tough to determine from the first few draws which decks were good and which decks were bad. Now, participants who have normal brains, who didn't have damage to their ventromedial prefrontal cortexes, they started drawing from the decks that had the good outcomes. They started to realize, maybe after about 30 turns or so, that some of these decks were rigged to be good, so they drew more cards from those decks. Patients who had ventromedial prefrontal cortex damage didn't have the best decision-making process, and they drew from each of the piles equally and ended up losing money over time. But now here's the kicker. Throughout this entire process of drawing cards from these 4 decks, the scientists measured how sweaty the participants' palms were getting, because skin sweat is related to anxiety. And they hypothesized that maybe our body would know which deck was the good deck and which deck was the bad deck before our brains caught up to it. Turns out they were right, because participants who had no damage to their ventromedial prefrontal cortex, after only 10 draws, after only drawing 10 cards from these decks, started to have a little bit of sweat on their palm before they decided to draw from the bad decks. They were having anticipatory anxiety about drawing from those bad decks. And the amazing part is, they did not consciously know at that time that those decks were bad decks. So the body knew before the mind caught up that some of those decks were good for you and some of the decks were bad for you. So I think this is really amazing evidence that our body is trying to help us to respond to fundamental life decisions that are sometimes difficult.
So I think that's such a fascinating video that tells us that our bodies are constantly trying to feed us information. So really our bodies are the internet, or part of what forms the internet. Now science says that self-trust paves the way for personal autonomy and self-respect. And when we can trust ourselves, we can believe ourselves. Being aware of our thoughts and emotions is some of the ways that we can start to tap into this. Having the courage to stick to our core values and saying goodbye to peer pressure is another way that we can achieve this. Expressing ourselves honestly. This says saying no to things that we really don't want to do, and also knowing when to prioritize our well-being over everything else. Another thing that brings us to this is being confident that when life throws us lemons, we can hit them out of the ballpark, pursuing our dreams without letting things get in our way. And Chris Groff, she identifies 5 steps to finding the answers within. And how often do we take the time to listen deeply to the quiet voice within ourselves to find the answers that we're waiting for? Do we ever wonder what secrets or wisdom are hidden beneath our surface, hidden within ourselves? And what difference would it make for us to be able to answer those hidden questions, right? We're often told to listen to our instincts. We're often told to find answers within, but how do we do this? Firstly, is taking some time to connect with ourselves. That means turning off our phones, our computers, our TVs, and allowing ourselves time just to be. This could be going for a long walk in solitude. It could be sitting outside, taking a long, relaxing bath, resting silently in our favorite chair. It doesn't matter how we do this. The important part is that we take the time to disconnect from all the busyness, from all the stress, and all the distractions of our daily lives. Secondly, take some deep breaths and quiet the mind. Of course, this is where mindfulness comes into play. Allow your thoughts to float on like clouds. And if there are any thoughts that come up that seem important, write them down and then continue to let them float away. We can address these thoughts later, but at least we're aware of them, and just a few minutes to calm and quiet and shift our entire day from thinking thoughts that we are constantly recycling. So, it's not about engaging the inner critic. It's not about being judgmental about our stress and our thoughts. It's really about being in the moment and allowing ourselves to do this. So it's all about taking time for ourselves to be with ourselves. Thirdly is to connect with our deeper self, right? So once your mind is somewhat quiet, connect with your deeper self. I like to envision a space at the very center of me, so within my core, and this space is like the eye of the storm. Everything may be whirling around me in chaos, but at the center, I am calm, I am quiet, I am peaceful, and simply sitting and connecting with my center, I find is very, very powerful. So I take about 5 to 10 minutes each day just to sit completely silently, completely peacefully, completely connecting to my deeper self, which helps me feel more centered, more connected, and at peace with myself. So the raging storms of life are still continuing, but I'm just giving myself that moment of peace. Fourth is to ask questions and allow the answers to come into our awareness without us forcing our answers into a particular direction. And once we're connected to this deepest part of ourselves, we can ask questions and allow the answers to come into our awareness. So allowing the answers to come without searching, without digging, without expectations, without any agenda. So ask the question and then sit back and wait for any insight, any vision, any word, any message, any feeling, any sense of knowing to come to you. The answers can come in unlimited ways. So being open to how they may come to you in that moment. And then later, as you go about your day, the answers are not always immediate. Allow them to come at any point. We have to be patient with this part of the process. Now, fifth and finally is to trust and practice, right? It all comes down to trust, and it all comes down to practice. Trust in yourself, trust your answers, trust that they are there, trust that they will come, trust in the messages and the answers that you receive. And the way to build trust is really to practice. So taking that time every day to connect with your deeper self, being quiet, tapping into your wisdom, giving yourself space, and also giving yourself encouragement. The more we do this, the easier it is, and the easier it will be for us to trust ourselves and to receive the answers that are coming within us. And really, intuition is the ability to understand something instinctively without the need for conscious reasoning, and mindfulness practice can declutter the mind and create a state of mind where this innate skill is developed and strengthened. So by doing this, intuition becomes greater, it becomes broader, it becomes bigger. We start to empower and to recognize our inner genius. So let's ask ourselves right now an important question and answer it. All right, so I'm going to ask you to grab a journal, something to write on, something to write with. And for the next few moments, the next few minutes, we are going to reflect on an important life question. So just writing down on your piece of paper, or maybe you're typing in your notes on your phone, ask yourself a question. And this relates to an important decision that you have to make in your life right now. So ask yourself a question relating to an important decision that you have to make in your life right now. I'm going to give you a few moments to write this question down. All right, and now closing your eyes and asking yourself, what do I really think about this? What is the real decision that I want to take in relation to this? Without seeking for external advice, without asking anyone outside of yourself, you are tapping into your inner net. You're giving yourself permission to trust your question, to trust the answer as it arises, and also to trust yourself. So just give yourself a moment, sit quietly with this question, and allow yourself to soften into whatever resolution may come. And maybe you can ask yourself, if a friend had to ask me this question, if a friend had to ask me advice in relation to something very similar to what I'm experiencing, what would I tell them? What answers would I provide to them? When your mind gets distracted, just invite it back to the moment of focus. And now softening into the process, allowing yourself to be released from the mental capacity that you're using on answering this particular question for yourself. Let's take a deep breath to seal off our practice. A deep inhale through your nose. And as you exhale, gently opening your eyes. Okay, so I'm going to give us about a minute and a half to jot down and to write down your reflections in relation to the question. So if you've already written down the question, now you're going to write down the reflections that came up for you during that mindful practice. I'm going to set the clock a minute and a half, and don't worry about whatever you don't finish. You will have plenty of time later on in your day to continue this practice. It's all about opening ourselves up to the invitation to look within, to look into our inner net for the answers that we are looking for. We have about 30 seconds to go on our reflection. All right, we can put our pens down and remember that this is really just about opening us up to the conversation, to the possibilities that are available for us within. So continue with this practice. Continue to ask yourself important questions and then come into yourself and write down whatever answers are arising in that narrative. And as I conclude, I would like to conclude with these wonderful words by Dr. Benjamin Spock. He was an American doctor who was the first pediatrician to study psychoanalysis to try to understand children's needs and family dynamics. And he says, trust yourself. You know more than you think you do. These are my final words as I conclude this session on our internet. Thank you so much for joining me, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for our final day in the Thinking Space Challenge. Bye-bye for now.